wrap up its case against George Zimmerman. And in the past week and a half, there have been several critical moments, from that 911 call to a dramatic demonstration of how Zimmerman may have fired his gun. Among them, the hoodie that Trayvon Martin was wearing on the night he died, a single hole marking the place where the bullet entered Trayvon Martin's body. Here for some perspective, Paige Pate, a criminal defense attorney, Jason Johnson, HLN contributor, chief political correspondent for Politic 365, and a political science professor at Hiram College, and Tanya Miller, a former prosecutor. Welcome to all of you.
Morning. Thanks.
And thanks for coming in on 4th of July. I appreciate it. So the judge gave the jury a break on the 4th of July, but trial will resume on Friday. The lawyers had been arguing, hey, why don't we just take Friday off too? But Paige, the judge said, no, I want to get this trial done.
Well, the judge has sequestered the jury. So obviously the judge is very attentive to the needs of that jury. And this judge, unlike some other judges we've seen in high-profile cases, wants to keep this trial moving forward. And she's doing a very good job of that, I think, right now.
I think that would be helpful for the jury.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree 100%. I mean, I think this judge is doing a great job keeping this trial on track. She's very matter-of-fact. She knows the law. She keeps things moving, and that's always good when you're a jury and you're sequestered.
So let's step back and take a look at moments, the moments that stood out during 8 days of testimony. And I'll start with you, Jason.
Well, you know what's interesting? I couldn't help but look at your interview with Rachel Gentile's lawyer. And Rachel Gentile was such a huge part of this trial. And it's fascinating to me. If we had learned about the girl that you found out in the interview and her relationship with Trayvon Martin, I think that really would have made a huge difference in this case. Find out that Trayvon was the kid who didn't make fun of her. It would have humanized him because they still don't know him. So I think Gentile was one of the big parts of this case. We don't know if she'll help or not, but she was the biggest part.
The part of that interview that shocked me, frankly, was that nobody prepared Rachel Gentile for this testimony she was about to give. How is that possible, Paige?
Well, it's possible because she's not on trial. She doesn't necessarily have a lawyer. We have learned that she did get a lawyer, but he was saying he came into the game a little too late. As a prosecutor, you're not going to script your witnesses. You'll spend some time with the witnesses, of course, but you can over-prepare them as well. I do think she needed a little coaching, not about what to say, but perhaps how to say it.
So in the end, Tanya, how effective will her testimony be? Because right now, nobody thinks it was very effective. Or virtually nobody, I should say.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I disagree with that. I think that she came across as credible when she needed to be. The thing that makes her most credible for me is that she was willing to say things about Trayvon that didn't necessarily help the state's case. Unlike when you saw George Zimmerman's friend, he clearly had a motive. He clearly had an agenda. He's writing a book. He's trying to make a point. Rachel Gentile was really just doing her best to tell what she knew and what she heard. And so I think that makes her credible.
Yeah, it's not such an easy time for her now after her testimony either.
Unfortunately.
I know, because her lawyer also told me she's taking one day at a time, and she really should stay off the internet. Another effective witness, Detective Chris Serino. He was the lead investigator, and he talked about Zimmerman's honesty. Let's listen to that.
Is there anything else in this case where you got the insight that he might be a pathological liar?
No.
Matter of fact, everything he had told you to date had been corroborated by other evidence you were already aware of in the investigation that he was unaware of.
Correct.
Okay, so if we were to take pathological liar off the table as a possibility just for the purpose of this next question, you think he was telling the truth?
Yes.
Okay, so the prosecution had that statement stricken from the record. The judge told the jury just ignore that ever was said, but I don't think that's possible, Jason.
I don't think it's possible as well. But what I thought was interesting is after a strong start and then sort of fading off at the end of the week, I think that was probably the prosecution's strongest day, because they really highlighted the fact that, okay, so you just said you believed him yesterday, but we're going to make you go back over this tape, and you clearly seem to have more questions about George Zimmerman's testimony right after it happened than you do a year later. And I thought the prosecution did a good job of pointing out where Detective Serino was skeptical.
But Tanya, it took him a day to do that.
Absolutely. Look, I think this was an egregious violation of the evidence rules by the defense, and the prosecution let them get away with it. He didn't object when he was supposed to object. The jury never should have heard Detective Serino's opinion about George Zimmerman's honesty. That's a big no-no.
Okay, Paige?
I was wondering why the prosecutor didn't object, but then I thought about it. Do you really want to object in front of the jury to your own officer's testimony about what he thinks about the case? The jury is then going to think you're being defensive. Why, Mr. Prosecutor, can't we hear what this officer thinks about the case? So, you know, Zimmerman's lawyer, O'Mara, knew exactly what he was doing. Either he gets the question in and the officer answers, yes, I believed him, or the prosecutor jumps up and tries to defend and keeps the jury from hearing that critical piece of evidence.
Okay, so possibly on the stand tomorrow, Trayvon Martin's mother. And you can be sure they're going to play that 911 call and ask her to identify who was screaming. Anderson Cooper interviewed Trayvon Martin's mother last year. This is what she said about that 911 call then.
You've heard the 911 call where you hear somebody calling out help. Do you believe that is your son's voice?
Yes, I do. I believe that's Trayvon Martin. That's my baby's voice. Every mother knows their child, and that's his voice.
Okay, I was trying to tell him to turn my microphone on, and it's finally on. So that's probably, though, that's going to be the emotional demeanor of Trayvon Martin's mother. I mean, you got to believe that's going to be unbelievably effective, Paige.
Well, I expect it'll be effective. I expect it'll be emotional, but will it be enough? You know, the prosecution made a very good opening statement in this case, and they promised a lot. The question the jury has to answer is, did they deliver? And, you know, ties go to the defense. So if the prosecution hasn't put into evidence everything they said they were going to put into evidence, no matter how emotional the testimony may be, it's not enough for a conviction.
I don't know. That jury's made up of all women. Several of those jurors are mothers.
A mother telling the pain of losing her son, a mother telling stories about who she knows Trayvon Martin to be, and ultimately a mother who sort of sits forward and says, look, I have remained poised. You've seen me in this courtroom as well. You've seen how I've emoted. Now look at George Zimmerman, how detached he's been, and look at me who's managed to control myself despite my pain. I think that resonates with a jury as well.
All right, Jason, Tanya, Paige, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here on the 4th of July. Coming up next, our 4th of July weather. It's all over the map. We'll check in with Chet.